I'm sure as we finish the introduction very soon. I would first request the session one moderator, assimilator and speakers to kindly come on stage and be seated as I introduce them. Our first session is towards a blue economy. It is being moderated by Dr. Sanjay Bhavnani, and the assimilator for this session is Capt. Kishore Sunderesan. They both are committee members of the Intellectual and Advisory Committee of the IMRC project. The moderator today, Dr. Sanjay Bhavnani, he holds a Master's in Business Administration and a Master's in Maritime Law from UK and a doctorate for a study in area of marine human resources. He's been associated with maritime training since coming ashore and is presently the Director and COO of MMSI in India. With his over 3-decade-long experience in the maritime industry, he has an excellent insight into the various contemporary issues, and his aspiration is to ensure that the Indian seafarer continues to be a preferred choice of employers globally, and towards this he makes every effort to provide the right environment and opportunities for them. The assimilator for this session is Capt. Kishore Sunderesan. Capt. Kishore truly believes that life is a learning experience. He has flawlessly moved across sectors and countries ranging from ship management to software solutions to heading Kongsberg Oil and Gas in India. He is presently operating as an independent consultant and director with organizations in maritime, renewable energy and digital platform sectors, and continues to enjoy the learning and consulting experience together. So may I please request both of you to join us, and also Jeffery, Dr. Arnab and Mr. Jagmeet Makkar also to join us as I hand the session over to our moderator. As I have mentioned before, you will be hearing from our assimilator, Capt. Kishore, tomorrow at the closing ceremony where he will be sharing his formulated position. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, wish you a very good morning. Welcome to this first session of the first ever research conference which we are having in this country and probably elsewhere too. I think this is indeed a very major initiative which has been taken, and all of us are really honored to be able to contribute to it in whatever way we have been given an opportunity to do so. And I'm sure this will really go a long way in trying to project India not only as a leading supplier of the maritime manpower, but also as a leading maritime center in the times to come. I think India has got all the potential. It's just a question of trying to utilize it. It's a question of trying to harness it. And I'm sure this small step will be very instrumental in trying to take us closer to this objective whenever it would be achieved at some point of time in not too long a future. With that, I would like to just call upon all the speakers who will be there for the very first session. It's my honor to call the first speaker, that is Dr. Jeffery Obbard, who's from the Cranfield University, looking after the various international partnerships. May I please request him to be here? Oh, you're already there. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Can somebody help me with this? Dr. Jeffery, all yours.
Thank you very much.
We all look forward to listen to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sanjay. Very good morning to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to be here in Mumbai today. A special thank you to the IMRC committee and IIRE as well as ISF and IR+, and all of the sponsors. It's absolutely great to be here. I hope you can hear me. I think they're going to wire me up now. I'm going to project my voice here. Yes. Is that better? You can hear me at the back? Okay, thank you. So I'm rather chronologically challenged, but my presentation is Climate Change and Global Shipping, Challenges and Solutions. I'm an environmental engineer and scientist, and I've also been an expert reviewer for the IPCC. The world came together 28 years ago under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and stated that humanity must achieve stabilization of greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere at a level that prevents, in their words, not only dangerous anthropogenic or human-based interference with the climate system. At the time, that level, that target, was widely interpreted as 2 degrees centigrade increase in mean global temperatures and a concentration of about 450 ppm of CO2 in the atmosphere. Since then, advances in science based upon real-world observations, satellite technology, and oceans-based sensing technology, as well as our knowledge about the ancient Earth's climate history, something that we call paleoclimate, has led us to believe that that 2 degrees centigrade target is not really based on good science. We have a stunning level of evidence now, and indeed it's becoming apparent that the planet is already experiencing dangerous climate change at about 1.1 degrees centigrade of warming against the pre-industrial baseline, which is where we are today. So we're often told that understanding climate science is pretty challenging and complex. In fact, it's quite easy if you look at it from a thermodynamic and physics point of view. Basically, for the Earth to have a stable climate, it must be in energy balance. That means basically that the energy coming in is equal to the energy going out. Makes sense, right? So of the incoming solar radiation, about 1/3 is reflected straight away from our planet's surface, principally through high albedo surfaces like ice sheets, and 2/3 is retained for some time before being radiated back out to space because of the presence of natural greenhouse gases. We now know that through the combustion of fossil fuels, that carbon dioxide is the main non-condensing greenhouse gas that is driving climate change. It's also very important in terms of further regulation of the atmosphere and, as we'll see later, the energy balance of the planet. So we can think of CO2 as a regulator, and more CO2 in the atmosphere simply means throwing another blanket on the bed in terms of heat retention. Pretty simple. So, as I say, CO2 emissions are driving the Earth's energy imbalance now, and this imbalance is causing climate change. Here's a record of the mean surface temperatures since the beginning of the last century and before, and we can see in particular since about 1970 we've seen a sharp increase in temperatures, and we're now, as I said, about 1.1 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial baseline. Recently, the World Meteorological Organization under the UN has stated that the last decade was the warmest on record. And in fact, the 20 warmest years in recorded history have all been in the last 22 years, and the last 5 years have been the warmest ever. Interestingly, based upon that paleoclimate data, when we look back at the geological record, we know that during the last interglacial period, because of the way the Earth was tilted on its axis, it was receiving more sunlight. Temperatures were about 1 degree centigrade higher than they are today, about the same as today actually, and sea level was up to 9 meters higher. Going back further in time, 3 million years, during the mid-Pliocene, we had about the same level of CO2 in our atmosphere as we do today. Sea level was 25 meters higher. Bit of a wake-up call. So, getting back to the Earth's energy balance, it's only recently that we've been able to measure energy balance in the system and determine whether the energy coming into the planetary system is the same as that going out. And we know that about 90% of the excess heating in the planetary system is actually absorbed by the oceans. So by measuring the heat content of the oceans, it's really a definitive metric in terms of the physics of global warming, if we can measure it accurately. And this indeed has become possible just in the last 15 years or so through the deployment of what we call the Argo Float Global Ocean Observation System. Amazing. You can see one of the floats here. It's about the size of a man. You can see it in the ocean on the right-hand side. And we now have close to 4,000 of these floats across the global oceans. Pretty amazing piece of technology. Basically, the float goes down as deep as 2,000 meters over 10 days or so. And as it rises back to the surface, it collects physicochemical data, including temperature data, which is then beamed to a satellite, and we can monitor more or less in real time. This graph shows the accumulation in ocean heat content, ship-based up until about 2005, following with the advent of the Argos system beyond. The trend is clear. Ocean heat content is going up, particularly in the upper 2,000 meters of the ocean. So definitively, we can say the Earth is out of energy balance. In fact, last year, the upper layers of the ocean were the warmest on record, and this led the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change to state that it is now unequivocal. There's no debate. The globe is indeed warming and at an accelerating rate. So the imbalance has actually been measured by the Argos system is tiny. It's only about 0.75 meters, watts per meter square. But of course, when you multiply that up over the entire surface of the planet, it's pretty huge. And that's on top of the warming that's already taken place prior to 2005. So that additional energy represents about 20 times the level of human consumption of energy per day on the planet, or it's the equivalent of detonating about 450,000 Hiroshima-sized nuclear detonations every single day. That's how much energy is going into the system, and that also means that we have more warming in the pipeline. In other words, if we stopped emissions today, the planet would carry on warming because of the warming in the pipeline through the ocean heat content. So we had a warning from the IPCC in October 2018. Basically, it was in relation to the more ambitious 1.5 degrees centigrade target under the Paris Agreement. And basically what they said, at this level of warming, 1.1 degrees centigrade, we're already impacting the scale and intensity of extreme weather events around the planet. Heat waves, floods, wildfires, and if you keep your eye on the news, you'll see virtually every day there's some report about wild weather around the planet. It came out with a very bold statement, which was this: limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade requires rapid, far-reaching, and unprecedented changes in all aspects of society. The latest statement is that we must achieve cuts of over 7.5% every year till 2030 if we stand any hope of coming in under that 1.5 degrees centigrade target. So what about global shipping? Well, shipping is associated with the combustion of fossil fuels, of course, and that is associated with the emission of a wide range of atmospheric pollutants, gases, and particulates. For the sake of this talk, we're just concentrating principally on CO2, but I will mention particulate matter as well. So in terms of the environmental impact, about 3% of global greenhouse gas emissions are derived from shipping. That's about 1 gigaton of CO2 a year. Pretty big number. 1,000 million tons, billion tons. And if shipping were a country, it would be about the 6th largest emitter in the world, equivalent to the emissions of Germany. With respect to particulates, here you can see a gentleman covering his face, not because of the coronavirus, but to protect him from inhaling tiny particulates which are emitted on the combustion of fuel. The other issue here, closely connected, is the emission of black carbon. And we're concerned about black carbon in the context of climate change because it can have a dramatic effect on the reflectivity of surfaces, particularly ice when it lands. It changes the reflection. So if ice becomes less reflective, If you don't believe me, here's a picture of Glacier in New Zealand, and it's brown because of the particulates that have landed on it, not from ships, but the bushfires in Australia, even though this is obviously hundreds of kilometers away. Completely changed the reflectivity of that ice. So the IMO has embraced the SDGs, which is great, and conducted several studies. The 2014 study on CO2 emission projections looked out to the middle of this century and said that emissions of CO2, the principal greenhouse gas, could increase by up to 250%, average of 50%. Very significant indeed. And of course, what does all this mean in terms of the SDGs? As we've heard earlier, these are a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all, implemented by 2030. That's 10 years away, guys. Not long, right? Principally here, I'm focused on goal 9, innovation, industry, and infrastructure, 13, climate action, and 14, life in the water. So all important goals integrated together. IMO is taking bold steps. So we have new regulations come in this year, basically to cut the emission of particulates and black carbon emitted from the combustion of fossil fuels powering ships. This is going to go a long way in terms of reducing ambient PM 2.5 concentrations in coastal areas and coastal cities, such as Singapore, where I live, as well as assisting in that problem of black carbon that I mentioned earlier. So this is very creditworthy. Capt, the Secretary General, said basically the IMO has worked very hard on this, and it's a beginning. There's still a lot of work to do, but it's a bold step in the right direction, which is great. Perhaps even more poignantly and significant, IMO meeting in April 2018, global historic climate deal. The goal to cut carbon intensity by at least 40% by 2030, whilst pursuing efforts towards 70% reduction by the middle of the century, based upon 2008 levels. Very ambitious. How's it going to be done? Short-term measures include improving the energy efficiency of existing ships, reducing speed is one way, and other technical and operational measures. But the IMO have highlighted that significant emission reductions in the international shipping sector depend heavily on technological innovation and improvements in energy efficiency. That sounds a bit woolly, but again, Mr. Lim said this is a strategy and not a final statement. But we have the International Transport Forum recently come up with a report saying that it is possible to decarbonize the maritime shipping industry by 2035 through a combination of measures. I won't go into detail, but just to highlight alternative fuels and renewable energy. You've heard a little bit about that. Electrical propulsion, wind-assisted propulsion, biofuels, green advanced fuels, even capturing carbon from the air and combining it with hydrogen to make renewable fuels. Technological measures to improve energy efficiency, such as a bubble curtain to improve the hydrodynamics and reduce the friction of the ship going through the water, and improved operational portside operations there. Very good. But let's be honest. Let's appreciate the challenge ahead of us. And the question is here, how well are we doing? What's happened since that report came out from the IPCC, that warning in 2018? So according to the International Energy Agency, since the Paris Climate Agreement at the end of 2015, global carbon emissions have not gone down, they've gone up. They've gone up by 4.5%. In fact, since the Framework Convention on Climate Change in 1992, emissions have gone up globally by 60%. This chart shows the accumulation of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, and those red circles and arrows represent international policies, treaties, and agreements during that time. Basically, what we're looking at here is a complete policy failure. Nothing has worked. Emissions continue to go up. That is the reality. The United Nations has looked at this and said basically the CO2 emission gap, i.e. the gap between the targets and the real-world emissions, is alarmingly high. The reality is that we're rapidly approaching a situation where even the upper target of the Paris Agreement, 2 degrees centigrade, is almost certainly too high to be safe, as I've said, but too low to be possible. That puts us in a dangerous predicament. Under current targets of the Paris Agreement, we're looking at in excess of 3 degrees centigrade, at least by the end of this century, if not more. So where does that leave us? Okay. So somebody once said this: only two things are infinite and go on forever: the universe and human stupidity. Which one? Okay. It's actually the gentleman on the left, Albert Einstein. He also said he wasn't quite sure about the universe, so he didn't have much faith in humanity. But the reality is, as I've shown, the Earth is out of energy balance, and that imbalance is large. And unless we address that, the planet will continue to get hotter, even if we reduce emissions to zero today. So this takes us to the focus of my work, which is looking at something called climate restoration. And I work in a broad range of areas, but I've looked at it in the context of shipping and what we could do in terms of deploying novel, innovative technology to address the energy imbalance that I've described. One strategy is called solar radiation management, and it's basically an attempt to emulate what volcanoes do when they explode. Here we've got an exploding volcano. All of those particulates are injected into the stratosphere and serve as tiny, tiny mirrors to increase the reflectivity of the planet. It's well known that when we have a major volcanic eruption on the planet, global temperatures go down, at least for a while. So people have looked at this in terms of the maritime industry and come up with a suggestion called marine cloud brightening. This is an attempt to increase cloud cover. Here on the right-hand side, we can actually see contrails from the shipping industry. Perhaps it could be possible to inject salt particles from the ocean into the atmosphere to act as condensation nuclei and encourage cloud formation and therefore the reflectivity of sunlight from the planet. Interesting. In fact, Professor Salter from Edinburgh University has come up with this prototype concept, which is an autonomous marine craft, which basically sucks up water and sprays it into the atmosphere to provide those tiny condensation nuclei for cloud formation. We reckon several thousand of these working across the ocean surface could reduce the planet temperature quite significantly. Amazing piece of technology. The other area that I'm going to highlight, and I hope I've got 2 minutes left, okay, is something that we call accelerated carbon dioxide removal. Basically, because we've left it too late for emissions, we need to actively look at ways in which we can draw down excess carbon in the atmosphere. What you're looking at here is a satellite image of what we call phytoplankton, or microalgae, which naturally occur in the ocean. This is a bloom of microalgae, which is hundreds of kilometers across. And of course, plants, when they photosynthesize, they need sunlight, and they need carbon dioxide and water, and some nutrients, and they suck down that CO2. The ocean is a massive carbon sink, thanks to our friends. Interestingly, also the source of oil, fossil oil. So essentially all we're doing is digging up fossilized microalgae and burning it and putting that CO2 back in the atmosphere. People have looked at the possibility of using shipping to introduce limiting micronutrients into the ocean. Turns out that vast expanses of our ocean are what we call ocean deserts. Most of the photosynthesis takes place around the coastlines. That's where the nutrients are. What if ships could deliver the limiting micronutrient to encourage algal blooms? So here we see a ship, and the micronutrient of interest is iron filings. It's cheap. It's accessible. But what they've shown is that by injecting iron particles into the ocean, you're feeding the microalgae and causing these massive blooms, and they fix the carbon dioxide. When they die, they take that carbon dioxide down to the bottom of the ocean. Another strategy for climate restoration. So instead of perhaps banging our heads against the wall about energy efficiency and ship design, maybe we need to think out of the box and see how shipping can play a role in what we call climate restoration. Okay, somebody once said this: if you don't change direction, you may end up where you are heading. The United Nations has told us that we've now only got 10 years left before we completely blow our carbon budget and face catastrophic climate change. It's that urgent. So I say dangerous climate change is already here. Continued emissions of greenhouse gases, particularly CO2, will trigger unpredictable changes in our climate system. And that has severe ecological and environmental risks. To avoid this, we must rapidly decarbonize the global economy and restore the Earth's energy balance, probably down to a concentration of, at the most, 350 parts per million of CO2. Currently, we're at 415. The mathematics on removing 1 ppm of CO2 from our atmosphere equates to about 7.2 gigatons of CO2. The cost of doing that is estimated at $1.6 trillion for 1 ppm. That's the challenge that we face. Okay. Shipping, as I said, only represents a very small, about 3% of global emissions, but it's a significant fraction that is set, as I said, for rapid growth, somewhere between 50 and 250% growth on current trajectories by the middle of this century. As we've seen, great advances are possible: energy efficiency, ship design, cleaner fuels, etc. And I also believe, and this is radical, this is cutting edge, I believe that shipping could play a significant role in what I've described as climate restoration, restoring the Earth's energy balance and sucking that CO2 from the atmosphere. But it needs major scientific innovation and investment. But I truly believe with the IMRC and the work that's being done, we can all come together, engineers, scientists, those in the maritime industry, and resolve this problem. So with that, I'll say thank you. Let's remember, there is no climate leak. Are you taking questions later?
Yes, that's
Okay.
that's right.
Thank you.
So we would just like to thank Jeff for that excellent talk on the environmental system. And it was really very inspiring, and it has really provoked a lot of thoughts. I'm sure there would be a lot of questions in the minds of everybody here. We can just have those questions taken later on all together with all the speakers. Of course, Jeff is a very accomplished individual, and breaking off from convention, I need to give you a glimpse about all the achievements which he's had so far. He holds a PhD in environmental science. Normally this is done before the talk, but I'm doing it after the talk. He holds a PhD in environmental science and a BSc honours degree in ecology from the UK. He has served with distinction at various universities in Singapore and Qatar, and worked on environmental projects of global importance. In the USA, he served as the Vice President of Science and Technology at a Royal Dutch Shell Petroleum joint venture based in Hawaii to develop renewable, low-carbon biofuels. Jeff was the team leader for the United Nations Mondial Engineering Award for Sustainable Development, and he has served as an expert reviewer to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and the Belmont Forum on the Global Environmental Change. In 2018, his company, the iRazor Technologies, won the InnoFrugal Business Award for Sustainable Technology Innovation for Developing Countries. Jeff is currently a visiting professor to the School of Water, Energy and Environment at the Cranfield University in the UK. We are extremely fortunate to have him here. We are equally fortunate to have heard him speak, and we'll be looking forward to interacting with him further over the various questions which we will take at the end of this session. So once again, our very big thank you to Jeff, and we look forward to interacting with you further. Our next speaker is Dr. Arnab Das. Let me introduce him. He has served in the Indian Navy for over 2 decades. He did his master's and PhD from IIT Delhi as a uniformed officer and undertook several R&D projects. He was invited by the Tokyo University as a visiting researcher for his work on freshwater dolphins, and post his retirement from the Indian Navy, he worked at the Acoustic Research Lab in NUS, Singapore. Dr. Das is a researcher, maritime strategist, and an entrepreneur. He is the founder and director of the Maritime Research Center Pune that is working on a unique concept of underwater domain awareness as its main focus. He also runs his startup, the Nirdhwani Technology Private Limited, that provides consultancy and service for maritime security solutions and maritime conservation support. He has over 70 publications and a book to his credit. So we have another very accomplished speaker here. May I invite you here, Captain Das, and please address the audience here. We look forward to speaking to you. Very big hand for him, please.
So much for this opportunity. I think it's indeed a very important event to come and present the work that we have been doing, and I would look forward to connecting with various people present here. And it's I think a spectrum of diverse stakeholders and diverse multidisciplinary people. So I have tried to keep my presentation more broad-based, and I look forward to questions later. I think acoustic habitat degradation is something, as DG sir also mentioned, extremely important today, and now the IMO has also taken it up very seriously. European Union is looking at it very seriously, and I think it's time the Indian industry takes it very, very seriously, otherwise we may find ourselves left out in this whole thing, and that's what I would try to explain in my presentation. And underwater domain awareness is a framework, because any new idea always suffers from issues of lack of resources, lack of motivation, and all kinds of things. I mean, this audience knows that. So underwater domain awareness framework talks about pooling of resources and synergizing of effort, because multiple stakeholders need to come together, find what is in it for them, and then support it. So I'll try and convince the audience on these aspects. These are the heads I would be talking about. What is acoustics and the underwater domain? Where are the various applications of acoustics, and how this can be leveraged for any conservation, or when we talk about overcoming the challenges as has been talked about. Now, acoustics in the ocean, I mean, it is very important for us to know that speed of sound in air is 345 and speed of sound in water is 1500. So almost 5 times more. So sound is the only signal that propagates efficiently underwater. Having said that, apart from humans, like we in the Navy use sonars, even marine mammals depend on sound to perceive the environment around them. So the importance of sound, I think, doesn't need any more elaboration. So, and very importantly, low frequency sound suffers very minimal attenuation or absorption, and so it propagates very far. And to give you some numbers, shipping noise can be heard thousands of kilometers away. Big whales, bright whale, blue whale, they communicate more than thousands of kilometers away. That is the importance of low frequency sound. So, and with the distribution of shipping across the world, I think you all understand that it is the single ubiquitous source of sound in the ocean, which is continuously present. I mean, as we are talking, we know there are more than 25 million ships underway somewhere in the world. And this is not a predicted, this is a recorded data. Since 1950, the sound because of shipping, the low frequency sound because of shipping has doubled every decade. This is recorded. I mean, there are 2 locations where this recording is being done. Donald Ross has published this 15 years back, and this recording goes on. So every 10 years, the sound because of shipping, or the low frequency sound because of shipping, has contributed to doubling of low frequency ambient noise in the ocean. So that is the level of acoustic degradation that we are talking about. There are many other applications of sound. For seismic surveys, we use sound, but these are very transient sound. I mean, you can stop this activity and this will stop, but can we stop shipping? We can't. Way back in the 60s and 70s, the Marine Mammal Protection Act of the US was the first precautionary principle in terms of regulation, and they talked about managing sound. The UNEP in '82 talked about hazards of sound, but even today we don't have regulations that actually control sound or have put any restrictions on sound. Now there is a lot of discussion going on, a lot of research going on, but it has not yet, and probably there is no lobby to support the marine mammals. Ballast Water Treaty came up much later and became a regulation, and it got implemented. So I think there are issues beyond technology that we need to discuss. So I call it a multidisciplinary area where people from all disciplines should get involved. Technology, yes, but even other aspects are equally important. Social engineering is equally important, and a whole lot of things. Geopolitics, international relations, and so in Maritime Research Center we talk about multidisciplinary work. Even for climate change, rise of temperature, underwater acoustics is used, because sound gets affected by change of temperature, and there's a system called ATOC, acoustic thermometry of the ocean, which has been set up by the US to monitor. I mean, they call it being used for monitoring ocean temperature rise, but this is also used for various military purposes. I mean, this was more of a technology development thing, and environment is the easiest to piggyback on. Now, looking at the marine species, we as naval engineers, I have studied marine species, the way they use sound, and there's a lot to learn from them. They use biosonars to find their prey. I mean, for finding food, they use. So you can see they are sending a signal, and they process the return that comes after hitting the target, and the way we use it, Navy. And I have studied, as I was introduced, I've studied marine freshwater dolphins. When they are doing initial surveillance, they use long pulses, and when they are going for the kill, they use short pulses, because they have to acquire the target and kind of go for the kill. So all this, I think, we as humans have much to learn from them. Then so there's a lot that is there, but at the same time, their use of sound is being now interfered with by the human activity. So we need to understand that. I'm not here. I'm not an activist or a showstopper that we should stop this, but with better underwater domain awareness, I think we can navigate development more effectively. We can probably navigate more sustainable growth or more sustainable development. That's the first and foremost is underwater domain awareness. I mean, different, but we can't be talking in general that noise is going to affect. So different species have very different perception of sound, or different frequencies of sound. So different sources of sound affect different species. So that also needs to be understood. I mean, a source path receiver analysis needs to be done, so that we can exactly know which are the vulnerable species and which all species get connected to a certain source of noise. Shipping is one. There are many other. Naval sonars also affect marine mammals, but it is not that across the board all species get affected. So we exactly need to know, and probably, I mean, in the beginning we need to start with certain vulnerable species which are almost at the verge of extinction. Going forward, I mean, the humpback whale, I mean, this was a US naval facility called the Sochus, which was set up at the peak of the Cold War, and they recorded multiple humpback whale sounds. Humpback whales sing, I mean, obviously the males sing for the female, I mean, almost an hour-long thing, and they're very well structured. If you look at this is how, I mean, people who understand music, they will know. And they started understanding, and this was a recording facility which was available for many years, and now even that data is being analyzed, and then gives us a far better understanding of how noise is being used by various species, and basically the understanding of the soundscape, and how we can kind of maneuver the soundscape in a manner that we don't disturb them to an extent that they get disoriented. There's another example of sound being used for catching fish. I mean, by certain whales, they go down, put a ring of bubbles, and the fishes get trapped. So I mean, all this is there, part of my book. But I'm just kind of giving you certain. So now, what is habitat degradation? Particularly when we talk about shipping noise, it's like a slow poison. It's not instantaneous. It is, and the levels are increasing. And this is a statement made by somebody very senior. I mean, it's like death of 1,000 cuts. You know, you can imagine what we are doing to the nature. So, as I said, there are different sources of noise which affect different frequency bands, and so obviously different species. So this has to be understood, and in our waters, we need to understand this. But I think this is a global problem, so we need to have a global dimension to it and a global effort. And I'm extremely happy to see such a platform where these kind of things can take forward. I mean, this is it causes hemorrhage. I mean, it depends on the degree. I mean, initially it could affect. People may say they will migrate, but is it easy for you to migrate? There's a problem around your house. Can you just move away? It doesn't happen like that. And there are issues of pressure levels and all that. So they just can't shift like that. Even humans find it difficult to migrate. So there are a lot of issues we need to look at. Now, the uniqueness of the Indian Ocean needs to be understood today. And probably the pilot study should happen here. That's what I've been talking about. I mean, you know the importance of Indian Ocean region. It's become strategically the most important. There is maximum shipping traffic in this region. There is a whole lot of, now because of the piracy, we had so much naval deployments here. Even the bunching of ships happened. So I've written a paper on that, how that affects this acoustic habitat degradation thing, and I've given data to support what I'm saying. So now, I think this Kuznets curve needs to be understood. We probably are at the first dotted line. So this is the time when we need to look at the right regulations. Otherwise, we will miss the bus. And I mean, we need to be responsible. I think, and India, I think, in the Indian Ocean region, we have a very, very critical role to play. I mean, as multiple speakers in the morning have talked about playing a leadership role, I think technological superiority gives you a fantastic leadership edge. And if we can bring this, and I'll give you some of the work that we have done. Now, it is important for us to understand that we are in the tropical waters. Tropical waters, even in terms of the acoustic propagation, have very unique properties. I mean, just to give you an example, a sonar that gives you 32 nautical miles here in this region, temperate and polar region, that comes here gives you 5 nautical miles. So that is the relevance or the impact of tropical littoral waters. The acoustic propagation gets severely impacted by the tropical waters. Now, to talk in favor of our industry, now the European Union is going very, very aggressively on bringing regulations on the noise part. If India takes a lead and comes up with its own regulations here, we can use this as an advantage. The tropical littoral conditions to have our own standards. We probably in the beginning, our industry may not be able to meet the European standards. But we can have a plan. Next 5 years we implement this, next 10 years we implement this. But just keeping quiet and staying away doesn't take away the problem. I mean, now we are signatory to the Paris summit, so we have to comply with it at some point or the other. So it is important that we look at this, and we need to have our own standards, and the standards must bring out all aspects. Now, these are the recent strandings. I mean, May 2016, a 40 feet blue whale got stranded, a 50 feet bright whale got stranded September 2016, and then we had 90 pilotless whales stranding in Tuticorin. These two I have analyzed, and this is attributable to the anti-piracy operation that has been going on since 2009. I've given enough evidence, enough scientific data to substantiate what I'm saying. I mean, you can go through my paper that is available. Now, what is underwater domain awareness? Primarily, it is to monitor what is happening below the surface of the water. Very plain and simple definition. Who are the stakeholders? Maritime security, whether it is defense, external security or internal security. I mean, Indian Ocean region has its own political volatility, so there are security concerns, non-state actors, there are a whole lot of threats. Capt came from the surface, but the next time the people may not come from the surface, they may come using some underwater threats. I mean, let's not talk about that now. But there are other issues also. So how do we? I'll quickly talk about them. Underwater security. Submarines are now Indian Ocean region is looking at, even India has given a submarine to Myanmar. Smaller countries are looking at this. In the erstwhile Russia and America going through the Cold War, they had come up with something called a water management treaty, where they had a mechanism how to they de-escalate. But we don't have that, and I think the countries in this region are not matured enough to be able to handle such things. So there is a lot required. So underwater domain awareness becomes a very critical factor. I talked about the terrorism aspect. Now migration, people talk about climate change. There's going to be large scale migration in our shores, in our waters. What is our preparedness to handle that? Now in terms of blue economy, Indian Ocean region is a hub of energy security. I mean, sources on one end, growing economies on the other end. Food security. How do you manage fishing? The fish stock globally is on the decline since 1996. This is a well-established research that, and the bycatch, in not just in India but globally, is almost 80%. So how do we manage or regulate fishing? Is something we need to. There's a lot of technology that is there. So this is all part of underwater domain awareness. Offshore assets. Offshore assets are there. Their impact on security. Their impact on the environment, their own vulnerability to various aspects. So again, underwater domain awareness becomes an important thing. Deep sea mining is an important issue. Now, disaster management and acoustic habitat degradation is again very important. We are seeing a lot of such stranding incidents, so we need to look at this very seriously. So what I'm saying is, if you build an infrastructure for underwater domain awareness, it doesn't have to remain limited to one stakeholder. Today, there's a lot of fragmented effort. I mean, defense does its own thing, non-defense does their own thing, they don't talk to each other. So, because these require massive investment, and national assets cannot be fragmented like that. So if we come together, there's a lot one can achieve. I mean, even just in terms of pure science and technology, our understanding of the ecosystem in the Indian Ocean is very, very minimal. We don't even know how the different components of the ecosystem interact with each other. So there's a lot of case to work on that and build that up. Now, if we are talking about underwater domain awareness, can we put sensors? I mean, if you just look at our EZ, it's 20 lakh square kilometer of area. Can we put those many sensors? We can't. So how do we build smart systems with today deep learning and various aspects? Every vessel of opportunity can pick up data and upload it to a center, data center. Where is that? So a whole lot of new technologies are available today which can be leveraged, and we can build this underwater domain awareness in a very, very different way. I mean, we can't go with the conventional methods. We can't put a budget of few thousand crores for just this aspect. I mean, it's a new thing. So how do we leverage that? I mean, there are a lot of work happening in data science, but how do we present an application which has got real world problem solving applications? So I talked about this, tropical littoral challenges. Our own understanding of the acoustic behavior in our waters is just not there. I mean, there are very fragmented work which is just not available to the researchers. This is my basic block of UDA framework that I talk about. If you look at this cube, the horizontal construct, multiple stakeholders that we talked about, national security on one end, blue economy, environment and disaster management science, all of them may have their own requirements, specific requirements, but the core will remain the acoustic capacity building. Unless our sonars work well, unless we are able to overcome the challenges of the tropical littoral waters, we will not get the results that we are talking about. So the acoustic capacity building, and everybody can actually pool in resources. Research can be for not restricted to a particular stakeholder. Once we build these capabilities, everybody can benefit out of it. Now, if you look at the vertical construct, we have very little understanding of our own conditions, our own waters. We have no idea. What about, and then application specific analysis, and then we bring regulations. It's normally the other way. IMO will publish something and we'll try and implement or resist. We'll be reactive. But we need to be proactive, do something on our own, and let me assure you, this is not high cost. If we understand what we are doing, it is just not. And today there are so many tools available and so much available around, and if we can understand, leverage what is available, I think we can do well. And this also, I mean, IMRC talked about a structure. This actually can give us a national framework or a global framework. We know, now if you look at these small cubes, they talk about the multiple aspects. Even for students who want to get involved, youngsters who want to get involved, they know exactly what their work is and it is relevant to which stakeholder. Even for the career option, it becomes easy, and for the industry, it becomes easy to pick up. And there are multiple areas which are common to multiple stakeholders. So this gives you a very good. And another thing I've seen in India, and probably not just why do we keep beating India, in developing countries. I mean, in developing countries, we have multiple organizations. Even if you look at India, there are multiple organizations, there are IITs, a lot of research is happening. But everybody does what they can do or what they like to do, rather than looking at, because there is no national policy. So this actually tells us, if we suppose this part has been done, you just color it, and then the next researcher knows that I need to work somewhere else, not here, this is already done. So this gives a very structured way forward in terms of taking our work ahead. I think I'll not talk about MRC much here. We, my company, won a global innovation challenge on a project for environmental monitoring. I'll just quickly talk about that. December I was in France, and there is a lot of interest in this work that we have done. So we run a couple of programs which are of importance. We run a UDA summer school we have done for the last 3 years. It's a 6 weeks project-based internship. It is now, I think, acquired a status of a national program. We had 39 participants last year from all over the country, right from Guwahati to Delhi and other places, and we've had multiple. And this is a 6 weeks program: 4 weeks in Mumbai, 2 weeks in Goa. Mumbai University supports us in Bombay. Goa University and NIO supports us in Goa. And we've had some very senior people: Admiral Karve, ADG Vijay Safekar. I mean, all the senior people get involved, and they, the participants got an access to the Coast Guard ship and various facilities. Some of the faces are familiar. Somebody is sitting here also. Then Vice Chancellor Pune University, Admiral Srikhande, Maritime. We had professors from Taiwan also, think tanks. I mean, it's an exposure to think tanks, research organizations, professors from IIT and abroad. And the Goa phase was inaugurated by the Chief Minister there, Director NIO, Captain Dilip Dhonde, I mean, who's an icon, I mean, to motivate. So he spent a day with them. And he even promised to take them on his yacht. Next time we are going to organize that also. And again, former director of NIO, he does a beach walk. I mean, a full day of beach walk from morning 8 to evening 7, where he takes them. He's a physical oceanographer. He's accompanied by a marine biologist. So from maritime marine diversity to physical oceanography, Admiral Arun Prakash, former naval chief. Now, I'll just take a minute on this. This is the work that we have done. The noise because of shipping, the low frequency noise because of shipping. The entire area has been divided into grids of 4.5 by 4.5 kilometers. The shipping traffic from the AIS data is picked up. All the details are taken. We use a predictive model to find out what each of the ship will produce. I mean, what noise it will produce. Bring it to the center of the grid, and from the grid, we take the channel model, because the local conditions are extremely important. And as I said, the local conditions are going to affect the propagation, and we do that, and that is how we get this. So this is a very important tool for quantitative and qualitative analysis of acoustic habitat degradation in our waters. AIS data is available throughout the world. This can be done at any location in the world. And this gives you a realistic, and this can be, this is real time. If AIS data is available, can be updated every 3 minutes. So this can be now, with the kind of computational abilities we have, this can be updated. Now there are many such questions that I was addressing one of the very senior committee, where the people said that this propulsion versus that propulsion. We can do all of it. Complete data analytics is there, and we can do all of it. I mean, you talk about a specific, say, diesel ship, or you talk about a specific ship, we can do that and give you the data. And then policymakers can take a well-informed decision on what needs to be done. And let me tell you, like cavitation, when we talk about a propeller cavitation, the supplier gives you the data. But when you fit it on the ship, does it remain the same? It does not. But this can give you that kind of on ground what is happening. So this is a very important tool I mean, right from the regulator to, I mean, many other people can use this, and this is a very important research tool that you, and this is what won us the Narwal challenge. Now, bringing down the broader UDA framework to underwater radiated noise management. I mean, UDA is a very big framework, a very massive area. So this is where acoustic capacity building for underwater radiated noise, the same technology is required for acoustic stealth. Being in the Navy, and I was heading that facility as a R&D in charge, where acoustic stealth is a very important requirement for the Navy. And there's a whole lot of technology available. All it needs to do is to translate to the merchant fleet. And draw out, everything cannot be translated just like that, because cost is an important aspect when you talk about merchant marine. But let me, so the same thing can be used for acoustic habitat, and even for ship design, and shipbuilders can use the same thing. And it is important for us to know that measurement and analysis is one part, prediction is one part, and then we can alter rather than banning anything. And there is work needs to be done for policy, technology, and human resource development. I think that's my last slide. Thank you.
So well, Dr. Arnab Das, thank you very much for that lovely presentation. The entire time went by so fast, and we were so glued on to it, trying to absorb it to the maximum possible extent. And before we know it, it's already over. So once again, we'd just like to thank you, and we look forward to interacting with you further on this. Just to give you a different dimension as far as the Indian Ocean is concerned with respect to the commercial shipping, I just have noted down a couple of points. You know, Indian Ocean being the smallest of the three navigable ones, yet happens to be the most important for all the trade routes between the other two. And yet, the world cannot but use this ocean for nearly 50% of its energy trade, 1/3 of its bulk commodities, and 50% of its containers. The most important of these routes pass close to the Indian shores. Now, this is where the entire context of this particular presentation assumes that much more importance when we view it from the perspective of commercial shipping. Well, we are now down to the last speaker of this session. That is Mr. Jagmeet Makkar. Let me give you a brief introduction about him. Mr. Makkar imbibes a unique blend of academic prowess and diverse experience in commercial shipping, shipbuilding, ship management, and dispute resolution. He is a supporting member of the London Maritime Arbitrators Association, fellow of the Hong Kong Institute of Arbitrators, and a member of the Hong Kong Maritime Arbitration Group. He has worked as the co-head of chartering and global head of shipping assets at the Noble Group. He has pursued a master's degree in energy, trade and finance in 2016 from the prestigious Capt Business School, London, and has launched his own firms, Pastage Holdings Limited and SkillsPlus. He is a regular speaker at various international events and has contributed to a number of various publications related to the industry. And we cannot have the IMRC without having him here as one of the speakers. So may I invite you here, Mr. Makkar, to come and share with the entire audience your diverse thoughts, and we look forward to hearing that. Thank you very much.
What we are, can I have that? No need? Can you guys hear me? Anjan? Is okay. I had good breakfast. I think we had two fantastic presentations. Now what I'm going to do is not as technical and as complicated. You won't find too many graphs and pictures. And before I start that, I just want to know that everybody is here. So can you just raise your hand, right hand, and do what I tell you to do. Okay? Touch your chin. Captain, you got it right. You also got it right. Everybody else is saying. Okay. All right. So now we are ready. What we are going to do is basically just look at the gap analysis from Indian perspective. First of all, we need to understand what exactly is the blue economy that we are talking about. It's a very complicated concept. There are a lot of elements to it. So what I am going to touch upon is simply maritime transport. So this is what we are going to touch upon, right? So the blue economy challenges us to realize that the sustainable management of ocean resources, now this is the United Nations definition, each one of them, each one of the different organizations has a different interpretation or definition of blue economy. I'm going to focus on few words here. Collaboration across borders and sectors through a variety of partnerships and on a scale that has not previously been achieved. This can only be done through shared value and collective impact approach. And what is shared value? That means the market economy, where you're looking at, of course, the people, their benefit, but the main aim is profitability. All right? Collective impact, on the other hand, looks at the civic economy. It doesn't look at the profits of the individual companies, but it's going to look at the collective contribution to the society as a whole. So publicly valuable, but not privately possible. So what basically happens is this. So you have the market economy here, then you have the civic economy here, and this is exactly what we need to be working on, bringing everything together. So when we talk about blue economy, when we talk about, even now from Indian perspective, I will come to that, various stakeholders need to come together. And this presentation, I am not going to leave anything as a concept. There are certain areas, gap analysis, and some suggestions, if I may, I would like to make to this august audience. Before that, let's look at what is this maritime cluster. We keep talking about maritime cluster. Day before yesterday, I was in Gandhinagar. I went to visit that area called GIF. Absolutely fantastic what is being done. I delivered a lecture in GNU. So this thought process started building up from there. Maritime cluster, what exactly is it that we are talking about? And what is the red thread? What is it? वो धागा, that thread, जिसमें मोती पिरोए जाते हैं. The pearls, they come on that thread. What is that thread? How do we bring it all together? That is extremely important. Tonnage. That's what the whole thing is. Tonnage. Controlled tonnage in a particular country. And then everything else builds upon it. And it builds upon very, very well. In order for this tonnage to get employment, you have so many different sub-segments that come along with it. Technical, crew, legal, insurance, finance, so many different areas, port agency, suppliers, stores, spares. This whole thing is built around this nucleus called tonnage. So now let's come back from the Indian perspective, and before that let me just take you to this. India is number 17 here, and below India is United Kingdom as far as tonnage is concerned. So when I say United Kingdom, I'm talking about the national flag. I'm not looking at Gibraltar or Isle of Man for the time being. Alright? So when you see here, Danish International Ship Registry, Norwegian International Ship Register, they are not their national flags. They are the second registers. Why they were formed? That is to build the tonnage around that. They have less stringent regulations than the national registers. Where was United Kingdom? Number 18 after India. However, in terms of services, London is right on top. Why is that? There has been history behind. Today, when you look at this grading here, which is the Shirwa Baltic International Grading, now that grading over there is because 80% of the contribution to get this rating comes from services. So somebody might say, so what? UK doesn't have much tonnage, but they're still number one in the services. They are there because of that historic tonnage which they have been having. The clusters have been formed, services have been established. Look at LMA, figures in 80% of the charter parties and other contracts, right? You look at ship finance, look at maritime legal profession. It goes all around London. So, what is it that we are going to look here? So, from the Indian perspective, let me first do a little bit of gap analysis here. Level playing field, we are deficient in as far as the Indian ship owners are concerned, both in terms of policies, taxes, in terms of ship finance, insurance. So that is one part. Then Indian Coast and growth of Indian Maritime Center. This is something, a proposition which I am going to make later. That is something to think about. Now, after reading this, can anybody tell me what exactly do I have in my mind? What is it? Indian International Maritime Centers. I heard in the last presentation, Maritime Centers. India is one of the leading maritime centers. What do I have in mind over there? I'm talking about registers. I'm talking about if Norway can have a second register, if Denmark can have a second register, if Britain can have Isle of Man and Gibraltar, why can't we with such a beautiful coastline? We can have a number of Singapores and Hong Kongs along the coast, why not? But let's not have number of them. We can have one or two, maybe one in GIFT, in Gandhinagar or something like that. So that is something we will look at that. Port structure, infrastructure, absolutely great progress which is being made. Shipbuilding. Now, yes, India has been absolutely fantastic in shipbuilding in past. Now we need to look at it. Do we really need to compete with China, Japan, Korea? Maybe not. But we need that as a speciality. We need that for our strategic reasons. Ship repair. We don't have proper ship repair in this part of the world. You got Dubai over there, and after that what? You go to China, Singapore is coming out of ship repair. If India can take care of that part, infrastructure, the retrofits expertise, or the ship repair expertise, that is something which gradually evolves into, shipbuilding of complicated ships or complex ships. The average age, rather not average age, the average tonnage size of the Indian registered tonnage is just about 10,500 deadweight. The average. So that is something is the logically next step from ship repair going on to that. Then research and development, yes, that's what we are here for, which is a must with focus and resources. From here, looking at the time, let me just come to the shared value domains, where I have got certain suggestions I would like to make, and we can discuss that. Indian International Maritime Registry or registers, it could be anywhere along the Indian coast. Like we can have, as I said, Singapore and Hong Kong on Indian coast. Now this is what is new platforms with their own set of new regulations. Let us not try and amend the existing Indian flag regulations. No need to do that. Let that exist like UK has, Denmark has, Norway has. Let that be. However, you can simply pick something which is existing somewhere else and put it over here, and that is an opportunity for the tonnage to grow. Indians, non-Indians, they can start registering ships under this second register, which we may call Indian International Maritime Register. And what happens with that? Then there is a tonnage control. And what brings it along with it? We will come and we'll see that later. International Ship Management Center. I have been living in Hong Kong for the last 26 years. I teach in Singapore. Look at Cyprus. Look at the cost base over there. It's very expensive. But yet ship managers, international ship managers are there. What is the reason? Most of them have Indians managing the ships. They are from here. Why can't we lure them to come back to India if we have those international maritime registries in India and we have the ships registering under that, and then the entire thing can start moving in this direction. You can have international ship management centers. So we can leverage the Indian professional expertise encourage the high cost based ship managers to come back here, and then develop and grow the maritime cluster around it. It is very much possible. Legal and alternate dispute resolution. Mr. Bhatia mentioned in the morning about arbitration. Yes, litigation is very expensive. Litigation takes a lot of time. Arbitration, with its commercial thought process and having people trying to help make the thing in terms of cost, time, as well as privacy better than litigation, is something we should be seriously looking at. But what is the problem that we have? The biggest problem we have is this. In Hong Kong, if you have an arbitration award and you want to challenge it and you go to the court, 99.9% possibility is they will just take it and throw it in the dustbin. No appeal allowed. Simple. You guys, party autonomy, decided to go for arbitration, live with it. Alright? Unless there is a policy issue, public policy issue, or there is a serious matter with regards to the arbitrator has not been, or he has been biased or things like that. That's it. And the error of law, that is something which is very debatable. Normally, Hong Kong courts at least will not entertain that. If we can do this, it's going to help us a lot. Our arbitration ordinance 1996 and the UK one, there are some paradoxes, some gaps over there, something can be looked at. So all these things can come together the moment you have tonnage and you build up around it. It's like a small web which keeps on becoming bigger and bigger. Professional education and skills development, of course. Here what I want to say is most of the such fantastic law schools we have in our country, being as an arbitrator or the claimants and respondents memorandum ranking guy in Hong Kong for which is moved, I can tell you 50% of the memorandum that I grade, they were Indian universities for that moot arbitration. That's the international commercial arbitration. In the same universities, let's have specialization in maritime and arbitration, maritime law and maritime arbitration. It's not difficult, we can do that. At every stage in that cluster, you require specific education, skills development. That is one domain which again gets built up if there is a demand. And the demand will come from these domains, and those domains link to the tonnage. Okay? Whether it is part of bareboat charter, that is the initial step I'm very happy we are taking. Then there are maritime registers, which I sincerely feel that that's the way to go. Research and development, of course, research with a purpose. I have seen, I just did my master's 4 years ago, and I know that most of the times when you do the research, you just pick up a topic which is irrelevant. It is not forward-looking. It is not going to help the industry. There's a poem I wrote long ago, I'll just tell you the 2 lines. Research should be पंख मांग बीते पलों से सपनों के असीमित गगन में. It should be using the wings of the past knowledge and then fly in the future. Right? That's how the research has to be. पंख मांग बीते पलों से सपनों के असीमित गगन में. That's what it has to be. Not that for the sake of getting a degree, you just have a topic and a supervisor doing 20 people under him, and then before going to sleep he starts marking. That doesn't work. And of course, it has to be part resources provision as a policy matter, and academia, industry and policy makers need to work together. And what is the red thread? I have been saying about that. That's the tonnage. That tonnage can come from Indian-owned tonnage, which is existing, but by providing level playing field so that they are able to compete. Indian controlled tonnage through BBCD or BBC, ease of approvals and implementation, user-friendly and forward-looking policies. We are moving in that direction. Indian International Maritime Register, something to think about and progress. This has the potential to develop Indian maritime clusters in India with immense strategic benefits, including reputational, knowledge hotspots that we have talked earlier, and employment at all levels, starting from the hotel industry up to anything and everything. This is where I feel we can go. you very much.
Well, Mr. Makkar, thank you very much for giving us a brilliant insight into the various opportunities which exist within the domain of the country, as well as the opportunities, and how both the strengths and the opportunities can be made to get associated with each other to really have a synergistic output from there. So now we have come to the end of this session as far as the presentations are concerned. I would like to invite questions from all the speakers, which can be posed to either of the three speakers who are there. I'm sure there would be so many of them, because this is probably just acting as a first step. There would be so many thoughts, there would be so many ideas, and there would be so many inputs here. So can we have some questions so that we can invite the speaker? We have our assimilator. Yes, sir.
Yeah, the risk of losing out 1 point on assimilation. I would like to ask a question to Dr. Jeff.
Yeah, sure.
Just a thought.
Can we give you a mic? Where are the hand mics?
Being introduced.
Can we give him a mic, please?
Can you hear me? Yeah, I think. So my question is, you had made a remark that iron being dissolved in water and then can restore climate. I'm just thinking out of the box, in case the countries of this world decide to have a maritime graveyard at the right depth without affecting the shipping on top. Within the shallow water, shallow means within the thermocline zone, so that the Fe gets absorbed and then gets evaporated. You think it's workable? Of course, the shipping has to be paid for scuttling their ship in these areas. Just a thought.
I think that's an interesting possibility. Can everybody hear me in the back? Yes? Okay. The objective here is to introduce iron as a micronutrient over vast expanses of the global ocean surface. And as I said in my talk, large areas of the ocean are what we call ocean deserts. They don't have high levels of photosynthetic activity. The idea is that as a ship travels across the ocean, if it can inject very low concentrations actually of iron particulates into the upper sunlit layers of the ocean, I think there's an important distinction there with shipwrecks, then you will trigger these massive algal blooms that I spoke of. These are fantastic in terms of their ability to suck down carbon and then precipitate it at the bottom of the ocean. It's an ocean sink. So this possibility, large trials have already been conducted. Some of the results are mixed. There's more science and research and innovation needed, but in principle, it works. What a fantastic combination of marine science, biology, and the maritime industry to address the challenge of climate change. So I'd be happy to expand upon that more later time.
Yeah, maybe a research opportunity. 1 point in assimilation.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely it can be used as a very important point for taking this particular discussion forward. And I'm sure when we'll be having the next IMRC, we'll have much more to talk about this aspect. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I would like to
May I just request you to please introduce yourself as well?
I am Captain Sabil Mahmood. I come from Bangladesh, and I am acting as head of nautical department of Bangladesh Marine Academy. So I would like to ask a question to our second speaker, Mr. Arnab Das, that the noise pollution, as you know, we have a mangrove forest, and India is also having a big share on that, and we are having a largest mangrove forest of the world. So do you have any research on what is the impact of that shipping noise on the mangrove forest? And we have a big challenge of maintaining those forests. I would like to know that.
Not directly on the mangroves, to be honest, but this also has, the Sundarbans and all these areas have what is called Irrawaddy dolphin, which is a facultative dolphin. So they are certainly, and these are blind dolphins. they can't see, so they depend wholly on acoustics, and we call it acoustic vision. So, and they are all part of the same system. So there's a lot of effect. But to be honest, I don't have any direct impact. But this can be studied. This is definitely part of the larger thing. But as of now, I do not have any information to share with you. But this could become one of the areas of research going forward. Thank you.
I'm sure this will be noted by our assimilator, no? For future reference. Yes, please.
Chai, former maritime professional, and now partly in academician and also a student. My question is, injecting these fine particles of iron, will it cause any kind of pollution by itself?
Well, thank you. That's a great question. And obviously a lot of interest in this topic that I mentioned. The large-scale studies that have taken place have shown, as I said, mixed results. Some of those results indicate, although the carbon is captured, as the dead biomass, the phytoplankton, makes its way vertically down through the water column, it's remineralized and decomposed. This tells us that only under certain conditions can it work. In terms of actual pollution, iron, of course, is not a contaminating pollutant, at least at the concentrations that we're talking about. I think the concern comes in with respect to changes in the ecosystem in terms of the composition of the species. But the good news is that these impacts are short term. The leading edge thinking on this particular application, iron fertilization that we are speaking about, is in the management of what are called marine paddocks. Basically areas about 50 square kilometers in size that are managed specifically for this purpose. So it doesn't have a massive detrimental impact on the ecosystem. It's a little bit like agriculture and land. When you use the soil to grow crops, you leave the soil fallow afterwards to recover. So it's a use and recovery type thing. So it's actually quite benign and sustainable, I believe.
How about these particles resting?
Well, if there are no concentrations, they're utilized biochemically, so it's not really an issue in terms of oxygen consumption. I'll keep Chris to talk more about that with you afterwards.
Thank you.
My name is D.K. Jain. I'm from the Institute of Marine Engineers, India. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. My question, or rather information, what I seek is from Commander Dr. Arnab Das. As a country, as a sector, we keep complaining that we don't have sufficient people involved in research, and one of the main reasons here is to discuss ways and means to do research. In your presentation, you mentioned a very novel initiative about having internships, interns as students who are coming and spending a few months. Also, with our sector not doing well, there are a lot of students who keep asking what more can we do to enhance our capability. Can you just expand on that a little bit with regards to the costing, with regards to the time, what is your process for selection, etc.?
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that question. I didn't want to include it in my presentation. We run regular internship programs, 6 weeks, 6 months, and even a year program, and that translates to a fellowship program. I mean, if you look at it, I mean, another question which students ask is that, what after that? But if you just look at India, I mean, not even looking beyond India, the inland water transport project, it's a mega project. Sagarmala is a mega project. There are maritime boards coming up all across the coastal states. There are a whole lot of opportunities. Marine archaeology is another important area. There's a whole lot of aspects that require. So we as a center, we are trying to kind of ensure that, I mean, even the job providers are also should be aware, because it's a complete ecosystem. I mean, having the right skill and going to the right people. So we are working with various, I mean, we also work on capacity building, so that, and we, so that's an important thing. And we are open, I mean, anybody can go to our website, and we support, and we find some good students. Bit Pilani sends us regular students. we've trained almost 100 students till now from Pilani alone. And through the other programs, almost 300, 400 students have gone through our program. And we are just 3 years old. So, but we are now talking about Center of Excellence for Maritime Studies. So we are also looking at postgraduate and PhD program. So even we seek industry support because some students may require some sustenance. They can't come support themselves. But even on CSR, we are doing it. It's already an ongoing process, but we can scale up if we get some support. And to the industry, we assure you that they will do what is relevant to you, and we will be the consultant or the technical partner to take it forward. So there are multiple programs, and I'm open to discussing and bringing out certain frameworks where we can be a win-win for all. But we have more than 100 areas where people can contribute. This entire UBA can be broken up into multiple things where it can be taken up. So we already have 5 PhD students who have finished their work, and some more are joining from various parts of the country. So, and we are based in Pune, so we'll be happy to support anybody, and we can even collaborate with the Ecology institution. Now, 3 big institutes are looking at a Center of Excellence for Maritime Studies. But I focus on underwater domain awareness alone. Maritime is a huge area. Let me be very honest. But my focus is only on underwater domain awareness. I don't want to go beyond. When I signed, there is a National Maritime Foundation in Delhi. There's IMF, so I'm connected to both, and we have this. Everybody says, let's write maritime. I said, no, the maritime is a very good word. I cannot handle it. I'm focused only on underwater domain awareness. But I think there is a lot more to do just in underwater domain.
Next to.
But in terms of fees and everything, those details are there in our website, and I'm happy to connect up with anybody, and we can have some institutional MOUs also where we can work together and take it forward. We are also now working on an ocean hackathon, and now I was in France last month, and they run a hackathon. So I'm trying to do a version here, maritime hackathon here, and send the best students there. They will host them for a week, and we are ready to support their travel because young students cannot afford that. So we can look at partnering that. Any like you or anybody who wants to partner us on that, and we do very low cost. We focus on quality. We are not flamboyant, so we will work it out in a very low cost, but it should benefit. Idea is to reach out to the maximum. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes. A quick question. I know time is running out. Professor Arnab Das PhD, IIT Madras, is a naval architect working in India. It's not my domain, but I missed the first lecture. I'm sorry. Most of the second one also. My question to Mr. Jagmeet Makkar. The last 2 slides summarized much of what you were trying to say in terms of the red thread and the points, and how India could become a, I don't know the word is hub or whatever, a maritime center, creating a maritime register, doing a Hong Kong or a Singapore. To me, I think this is something which elicits a deeper discussion, and with the DG shipping here, I would definitely request, are really these things happening in India, or are we just talking about it? We have been talking of being followers and not leaders. I don't know, maybe Mr. Amitabh could also react to what I'm asking, or maybe Mr. Makkar.
We are a closed registry. We don't allow any non-Indian to participate in Indian country. We have policy of 100% foreign direct investment in the shipping sector. And yet when you see the laws, the Merchant Shipping Act itself, which speaks to the registry, it clearly says that each and every share of an Indian ship is to be owned by an Indian, either a company or a citizen or a registered society, but it has to be. We have proposed some changes in the registration law, which Mr. Makkar also covered in his speech, and we have proposed part participation 49% share for foreigners in Indian registry. So that is participation through joint ventures in Indian companies. We have also proposed registration of bareboat chapters. So the present regime is based on complete ownership of the asset, and we register on complete ownership. We have said that we will treat bareboat charter also as ownership and register a ship which has been brought by either an Indian citizen, Indian company, or the joint venture where Indians have 51% share to register a vessel in India. So the registry itself is being made more open. The second point that he raised was creating a separate law for an international registry, which has been done by certain countries. These countries also have the advantage of not having a relaxed maritime law, but a relaxed law in general. So when we talk of the entire maritime ecosystem and we try to understand as to what ails Indian industry, then we will realize that the problem is not in the merchant shipping. The problem is in the laws that govern the business of shipping. So you have taxation, you have banking and finance, you have insurance, and we cannot have a territory which will have a law different than Indian law, where we set up an international maritime registry. It is a good thought if we set up, if we create a building and we say this is outside of India and no Indian law will be applicable, and we have laws for that particular building only, it is doable. But I don't see India progressing to that extent to say that we will not follow any Indian law for that particular building. So it's a good thought. Even if we don't have an international registry, we can do a lot to make sure that the world participates in our registry. And it's an issue which needs to be debated. If tonnage is what is resulting in creation of a huge cluster which he displayed in his slide, and I'm sure he had not covered all the issues. He has not covered you. You are also part of the same cluster. So if so much of opportunity exists because of this tonnage, then we need to take care of the tonnage. There is another thought which says that the tonnage need not be owned. If the tonnage is in our water, then we can still create clusters around that tonnage. So that is another thought which has been propagated in the ministries. And we need to debate on that also, that whether we can create a cluster without having a tonnage of our own. But if we are a user of that tonnage, then whether that would be enough for creating a cluster like this.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. I'm not the one who has.
Yeah, we just have time for one more question. That's what I just told by the organizers. So Mr. Obbard is right. Yes, please go ahead.
First is just a comment, Mr. Jagmeet, आपने कहा second register होना चाहिए, and then it's good it is also here, so thank you for that. Second register होवे, third register होवे, fourth register होवे, cluster होवे, कुछ भी होवे, but manning जो है ना पूरी Indian होना है. So पहला रूल बनाने में पहला लाइन वो डाल देना सर, this is for our कुछ भी करो. Seafarers की manning all Indian complement officer rating है. cluster करो, second करो, third करो, fourth करो. It will be good tonnage बढ़ेगा. So this was just a comment. Huh? Yes, definitely.
Not that they are proposing without competing with others.
Right.
We should compete with the Filipinos and everything.
Correct, sir. Just to say that if there is something on A, तो A का भी 100% है. मान लो A है 100, इसका 100% 100 people हो गया. ठीक है? So by bringing in extra और 50% extra डाल दें, 500 हो गया. उसका 50% is 250. So it is more than 100.
अपनी गरीब की बात करी मतलब वीर हूँ मतलब finally मेरा vested interest, our vested interest agency. That was just a comment. Now my question was to Dr. Das. You know, very unique. This is the first time I could even comprehend something like this in the underwater domain or noise pollution. Say, जो आपने बताया, very very interesting, very unique subject which you touched. Just you have, unless I have missed it. Can you कुछ आपने उसका कुछ solution have you given a solution? एक one solution अगर देंगे तो आज रात को मैं जरा सुकून से कहूँगा. Yes, a solution. Thank you.
We talk about acoustic habitat degradation. The work that I showed, which one of the innovation challenge, that gives you the complete level of the quantitative and qualitative analysis of the degradation. First of all, that is important, and the solution to that is there are. I mean, when you look at solution, there are three parts to it. One is at the design level itself, that you start designing better ships. The second is at the construction. The third is at the operation level. That when you are operating, now if you have already bought a ship, you can't go back to the first two steps. So what can you do as the operational thing? So there are solutions to that. I mean, we in the Navy, we do this. It's a very routine thing. So, I mean, bringing, now cavitation is the most critical aspect of noise. The moment the cavitation sets in, the sound straight away becomes double. So if you exactly know for that particular vessel what is the cavitation threshold, what is the RPM at which cavitation sets in, you just come down below that, you're doing well. So for any ship, if you can operate at that level, there's enough literature to it, and I have implemented it on naval ships also. So many such solutions are there. So there was not enough time to discuss that, but just now, if you as an operator, you have bought the ship, and if you have to go for a test, I mean the classification society now in Europe, it is slowly becoming mandatory, that you have to go for the test. So when you are even appearing for the test, what you write or what you do is also important. So then even in the ships, there are multiple machinery. If you have a redundancy that I can operate the ship with, say for the same operation, there are two equipments available. One is noisier and one is not. So when you're going for the test, you do that. You use the one. So there are many such things that we can list down. We can talk about it. It will take a little longer, but we can do that. But point is that this needs to be discussed. This needs to be brought into a standard operating procedure. Then only, but what I'm seeing is that people are just keeping a blind eye to it. I don't think we can afford to.
Right. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Quickly, can I add just 2 lines to that?
Yes, please. If the organization don't have any objection. No? Yes. Just do it quickly. I'll just request.
Noise reduction, this matter is being discussed in the IM. And in the last meeting that I attended, definitely the talk is there on this. So certain rules will come up with regards to, you derate the engine, you increase the size of the propeller, you reduce the speed. So basically reduce the noise which is being created. And cavitation is something which is extremely important. If you reduce the cavitation, or you run the ship at less RPM than that, I think that is a
But right here, right now, seafarer can't do anything.
seafarer can.
Seafarer can.
That's what we need to
No,
solve.
seafarer can. That's what he said. I mean, if you operate just below.
Commercially, it's not seafarer.
Seafarer just follows orders.
Okay, I'm going to use my discretion and I'm going to request you to ask a very short question. This is the very last question of the session.
Sir, wherever we go that we are always hearing that there is a blue economy. And the transformation of that, the oil-based economy to the blue economy, that how that India prospects to that implement that the various steps of that the blue economy in India. What are the various steps India has taken to implement that the blue economy from the ground level to upper level? Can you just explain it?
introduction meant for the entire panel? Or?
Because when I visited that from the ground level, people they don't know about what is cargo, packing, marking, labeling, export import, customs, logistics, supply chain management, treaty, contract, protocols. But at the time we are talking about that the blue economy, ocean beacon economy, marine economy, and everything we are spreading into all the presentations and everything. And I have also taken that the blue economy is that the various steps, near around 4,000 data I have also taken. But the thing is that how that the blue economy is implemented in India, what are the various steps now we have data for this? Can you just please?
Thank you. Thank you for your question. Can you have a very quick response to that, please?
The very first presentation that I put there, that was my disclaimer. Mic is not working. Hello, hello.
Can we have another mic?
The very first presentation, the slide that I put, that blue economy is a very complex subject. There are so many different aspects, and so many different organizations have got different definition of it. That's why purposely I walked here and put my finger on maritime transport. And I said I'm only going to look at maritime transport. Now, when you talk about blue economy, I would like to ask you a question. What is your definition of blue economy? What is it that you think blue economy is? And then the answer can be given based on your definition.
Yes.
And I think it's better for me.
The economy which is that is related to that the ocean, which can be usable in the all the sense of that the survival of that the human beings as and the nature. And a scientific approach and a proper forecasting planning and implementation of this one for the sustainable development and the protection of the nature is equal to blue economy.
Absolutely perfect. So that is why we are here. We are discussing that. And at every stage, things are being looked at. We haven't achieved it as yet. If we had achieved it, we won't be sitting here and discussing. But a lot of things are being done. But I will ask Amitabh ji to explain.
You asked a very valid question. We keep asking ourselves as to what we are doing about it. Blue economy, as I see it, and I had said that there are four very important players for blue economy. One, of course, is maritime security. We have ports and issues related to ports. We have sectors that exploit the maritime resources. So you have energy, you have logistics, fisheries, mining, seismic survey,
Everything including
wind energy, solar energy, whatever you can think of. And then you have maritime sector, which includes everything, shipbuilding, shipping, repairs. All of them have to follow the basic principles of sustainable development, environment clearance. And then we have regulation, which prescribes the rule of the game for all the sectors involved in the blue economy. Right now, if your question is whether we have a centralized blue economy strategy for say 2025 or 2030 or 2035, we don't have it. But there are multiple players in this field, and I forgot again the educational institutions, the research institutes, and we have several of them in India, right from Goa to Tamil Nadu. But what we lack is an integrated approach and a centralized governance setup which has an overall view of the blue economy of today and blue economy of future. Some work is going on. Planning Commission has taken a lead to at least come up with a blue economy strategy. But the discussions as of now there are very rudimentary because Planning Commission doesn't have the resources or the skills or the manpower to actually devise a strategy for blue economy on its own. And as it happens with any new setup, the person who speaks loudest is heard first. So of the many players in this sector, I don't know who's speaking louder. And we are still in the process. Good thing is that the process has started. We now need to have a forum where all the players involved in the blue economy sit together and discuss as to what is being done by them today, what are their plans for the future, and align their goals with the international requirements, with our national requirements, and develop the rules of the game. If we develop the rules of the game, then it will become very easy for each of these participants to pursue their goal for the next 20, 25 or 30 years. We are not there, but we are getting there, and I think in the next 2 to 3 years we will have a roadmap for the economy.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So we'll request you to discuss this subsequently. Thank you. So with this, we come to the end of this session. Let me just try and sum it up in as brief a manner as I can. I think the blue economy is all about making use of the opportunities which exist in the environment today, without trying to in any way impede what is known as a sustainable development. We don't really want to harm the environment, but at the same time we need to be able to utilize whatever opportunities exist to ensure that the benefit of that can accrue to this country, to this country's population, not only for the present but also for the future. And just a few statistics about this. 50% of the world population is in the cities. By 2050, it is estimated that 2/3 will be in urban areas. Last few decades, there has been a shift of power from developed economies to the emerging economies, thereby integrating the world economy. Since 1995, the world GDP has doubled. The world trade has quadrupled. As a result, shipping will continue to play a vital role in international trade and division of labor. Higher GDP growth has traditionally led to a growth in demand for shipping services. Last few years, though a weaker GDP growth has led to a weaker demand for shipping services, etc., etc. But what this basically means here is there are so many opportunities which exist in the environment around us, and they are all there for the taking. We just need to figure out how. With all these opportunities, we have to leverage our strengths and see how we can utilize them in the best possible way. So with that, I would just like to bring an end to this session. I hope we did discuss a lot about blue economy, and I could do justice to the organizers' confidence. Thank you very much for your patience, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bhavnani. That was very well summed up and moderated. Before we leave for lunch, I would just request Mr. Kapoor to show that appreciation to our speakers first, and also to our moderator and assimilator. So Dr. Arnab Das, thank you very much. We have Dr. Jeffery Obbard. And Mr. Jagmeet Makkar. And also to our moderator, Dr. Sanjay Bhavnani. Thank you very much. And of course to our assimilator, Capt. Kishore, Sunderesan, whom you will see more of on day 2 closing ceremony. But we'd like to thank you. Thank you everyone. We can now break for lunch. If possible, let's try to meet back by 1:45. Yeah. So that we only have a 15-minute delay, not Dr. Bhavnani. Thank you.
I'm so glad that they had some questions to ask. So I would have had to ask the questions, I would have been lost. No clue whatsoever.
But you summarized so well.
वैसे आपने जो बोला बिल्कुल सही है. What you said is hang on. This is what is required, and India has got a rich history. You know, we're talking about UK's history from 1600. India's got a history since the last so many thousands of years. Nobody is really taking that into consideration.